Today on Locked On Red Wings, if David Perron leaves, who fills his captaincy void?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a former broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And on today's episode, it's pretty much as simple as the cold open states. I want to know who we think is going to fill that void in captaincy if David Perron does not get re-signed by the Detroit Red Wings. He wore an A for them, and if he's gone, there's an opportunity for somebody on the roster to step up. And, you know, if you're reading this show sheet, it's pretty obvious who we and probably the rest of Red Wings social media are going to be keying in on, but I think there's some sleeper hits too. But before we get to that, Scotty, happy Monday. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing really well. It was, and I won't bore people with my life because nobody cares. They want us to hear, talk hockey. But I went to a bachelor party this weekend. I golfed for the first time ever. I golfed at the Heather in Boyne Mountain, which is supposedly one of the nicest courses in Michigan and a very hard course. It was all the same to me because I couldn't hit the ball anyways because I had never golfed before, but it was very pretty. And then I went to the casino for the first time, and I was down to my last 20, hit the blackjack table, and won it all back.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I went to CMU, so I Soaring Eagles right there, baby. But that's cool, though. I went to Nolan Bianchi's wedding. Was this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Congratulations,
Red
Nolan.
Wings. The
OG.
The OG. And Ethan was in his wedding party, so with the three of us. Got to hang out and catch up, and there's a picture of all three of us with ginger ales in our hands out there somewhere. I don't know who has that picture, but bringing the old band back together. So yeah, it was great though. It went awesome, and Nolan's a married man now, so it was really fun.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Nolan. Hoping for a long and happy marriage for you. Here, Scotty, we're hoping for a long and happy marriage between the Red Wings and whoever they choose to wear.
That's a pro transition right there. It's a pro transition. And honestly, I can't wait to have the same conversation later this year talking about you. I'm going to be the only person in Locked On Wings history. Ethan has a fiance now. I'm going to be the only one in about a year's time that isn't married. And that was a pro transition, though. I want to give you credit.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Scotty, I think that for the sake of the people listening, we shouldn't beat around the bush. We should get right to the first two names that people are going to point to. If David Perron leaves and that captaincy void, as in the A he wore on his jersey, is left open, who do we think are the leading candidates to get it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different names that we can start off with. I guess the point I want to actually kick it off with is just if Perron stays, the letter stays with him.
Yeah, points moot. Yeah,
right. That's worth bringing up. If they do re-sign him, even if he is in a bottom six role, he will almost certainly hold on to that letter. But if he doesn't, that brings up a few. I think I kind of want to start with Kane, if that's okay. Just from the sheer fact that I don't think it's a very long conversation. If he were to come back and Perron wasn't to come back, I feel like that would be a slam dunk. That'd be a really, really, really easy choice for the Red Wings. He wore an A for one game this year in the game against the Blackhawks in Chicago, where he scored the game winner, obviously. I feel like that is probably a pretty easy candidate if he is to come back and re-sign, but obviously that is a 50-50 at best, and I think you and I are kind of both leaning toward he won't be back. So
yeah, I think you and I are both on the camp that he's probably gonna go elsewhere. Not that we wouldn't welcome him back if he decided to return. And I agree with you. It would just be, it's a short conversation because it would be a slam dunk if he did come back. because he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to go down as one of the top 100 hockey players to ever play in the NHL. He, as you put again, already wore the letter once for Detroit, kind of as a gimmick, but at the same time, like it looked so natural on him.
Listen to how all of the players, the young players especially, Seider even like to get super specific, talks
Raymond
about
did too.
Talks about Kane's presence in the locker room and in his relationship with the rest of the guys. Man, it would be very, very easy, and I think very welcomed if he were to re-sign here. It's just that, again, I think you and I both are probably under 50% on the odds of that happening.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the next name on this list that I think most people want to talk about, and in my personal opinion, the leading candidate would be Moritz Seider. I think of anyone on this roster, it makes the most sense for Moritz Seider to get a letter with the Detroit Red Wings. And some people might push back and say Lucas Raymond. And if that's the case, that's fine. To each your own. I think that they're both good enough choices that I won't put up that big of a fight if you decided you leaned more Raymond. But for me personally, it's Moritz Seider. I think what we've seen out of Moritz Seider these last 3 years is true leadership material, right? His first year, he brought a lot of levity. He was a kid coming in. It was a tough year for the Detroit Red Wings. It was the worst year, one of the worst years the Red Wings had ever seen. Just 3 years ago, they had already gotten a little bit better since the 2020 season, but they were still a bottom 10 team in the league by the end of the year. And the team didn't have a lot of talent. He brought a lot of levity, but since then, every single year, he's been tasked with more and more responsibility. And he has stepped up to the plate on the ice and off the ice. His maturity level has grown immensely. He's been tasked on the ice, and we've talked about it at length. But if anyone who's listening to this hasn't listened to our previous episodes, last year in the NHL, he and Jake Wellman had the toughest deployments in the NHL per puck IQ and Dobber Hockey Frozen Tool player usage. They had the toughest deployments in terms of quality of the competition, in terms of offensive zone versus defensive zone deployments, like 10% more, 5% more. I don't want to exaggerate too much. 5% more than any other player in the NHL. It wasn't even close. And he took it in stride. He took it with grace. He said on the record multiple times, it's about with how we tackle this. It's about winning shifts one at a time. And if I'm put in the defensive zone and a defensive zone face-off, my goal is to get that puck out of the defensive zone and up the ice. And sometimes that's all I have to do. Like, he is comfortable doing what is asked of him to help the team win. He doesn't worry about individual statistics. He doesn't worry about, he worries about scoring goals. Everyone does, but not to the extent like he worries about his own personal statistics. He cares more so about the team winning, and however the coach deploys him so he can contribute that way, he is comfortable doing, because he knows he is the best on the ice. I think his attitude on and off the ice, and he's still a jokester. He still has that levity, right? But now it comes with that air of responsibility, and he's just embraced it. I think he's just, especially when given his age too, right? He's going to be getting a brand new contract. We assume it's going to be 6, 7, 8 years. That's just our assumptions, but just he's so ready for it. He's going to be here a long time. He's only 22, 23 years old. He's just such a slam dunk in my eyes to get the letter A, because he's going to be wearing it on this team for a long time, and presumably in their Stanley Cup window, if it ever opens soon. But it looks like it is starting to open with the fact that they keep taking strides each year.
Yeah, and with the extension on the table, that would be a very easy time to do it, right? You go, oh, look, we just extended him. He's going to be here long term. We're also going to put, he's going to wear the A, and I do think that matters, right? I do think that not that the players are, like super caring about who's, they care about wearing it, obviously, but long term, I don't think anybody's like, oh, like, we really care because Seider's going to be wearing the A for the next decade, right? Like, that's a season to season thing for most of those guys. But in the same breath, from the fans' perspective and the organization's perspective, to know that like Larkin and Seider, or Larkin and Raymond, we'll talk about in a second, are going to be your, like hierarchy and be your captains for the foreseeable future, I think does mean something, and is important for sure. So yeah, I mean, he's such an easy player to point to. I also think a big trait that goes along with that, we talked about it a lot, is availability, and not that injuries are, the fault of the player necessarily. That's not what I'm insinuating, but this dude hasn't missed an NHL game yet in his career. Like, that's so wild. So when you talk about somebody, and it's just really easy as point and go, hey, your number one, franchise defenseman, defense, having your number one guy in the blue line be, wear a letter is relatively common practice in NHL history. So there's just so many signs, right, that you can just point to and be like, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that Seider certainly does make a lot of sense.
It just seems so simple when you think about it. Like, it just seems like such a slam dunk for him to be the guy to wear the letter for the Detroit Red Wings. And I think you can make a similar argument for the guy we'll talk about on the other half of this break, and that would be Lucas Raymond. So to get to that conversation, though, I got to talk to you guys first about Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk you through it. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, or even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So that's why you got to get Policygenius, because they give you unbiased advice from licensed expert support team with thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockdownnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about candidates to wear the A if David Perron were to not be re-signed by the Detroit Red Wings. We talked about Kane and Seider in segment 1. Segment 2 here, I kind of teased Lucas Raymond, and I do think that there is a similar argument to be made of Lucas Raymond that you could make for Moritz Seider. I think that the big difference maker here is in role, and again, I don't mean that to discredit Lucas Raymond's role on the team. He led the team in points. He had 30 goals. He had 70 points. Like, that's huge. But Moritz Seider is the number one D-man. He is the backbone of the defense. I think that attributes more towards a leadership role than a winger. But again, I don't mean that to discredit what Lucas Raymond is doing, because he had an incredible season, and he's been an incredible player for the Detroit Red Wings, who has grown. He had a little bit of sophomore slump. That's to be expected, but he adjusted wonderfully in his third year in the season in the NHL. And I think that performance is a lot closer to what we're going to see from Lucas Raymond from here on out for the rest of his career. And sometimes it's just the guys who are the best on your team are the guys who are going to get the letters. And both Seider and Raymond are the best on your team, and I think that they're really healthy in the locker room as well. I've talked at length about Seider, but I think Raymond has a lot of those same attributes. There was a lot asked of Raymond, especially when Larkin was hurt. A lot of responsibility was thrust upon him. It was no longer a shared responsibility to score. It was like, okay, Raymond, you have to learn to be the guy. And he did learn to be the guy, especially the last 2 weeks. He proved to have that clutch factor that we have been needing on this offense. Down the stretch, Patrick Kane disappeared. Finally, a year and a half of not being able to properly condition for the NHL wore him down. He's going to finally get conditioned this offseason. You saw Alex DeBrincat went hot and cold. It was cold for long stretches. You couldn't depend on him. Larkin couldn't stay in the lineup because of injury, not through any fault of his own, but that's just how it is. Raymond, down the stretch, was wheeling this team to the playoffs, and that's an important attribute to have for a leader. And his personality, I think that fiery personality, remember he got into that scuffle with Sherratt. I think that's an important attribute to have too, to drive a team forward. He is feisty. He's a fighter. He always wants to win, even if it's in practice. I think Raymond's a really good candidate as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Honestly, I think in a perfect world, that's your letters for the next decade. Like
I think
genuinely. I think in a perfect world, right? Which going forward, like Sherratt is likely going to keep his, I would imagine. I feel, that'd be a weird thing to take away. We talked off air before, like Kopp has worn the A quite a lot as well. So he's another guy that's kind of just an easy person to throw in there. They might just slap it on him full time and call it a day. But I do think that there is something to be said for being able to realize every single person that you sign for the foreseeable future, that you trade for, that you call up, that you bring in, period, going forward, knows exactly who the core of this team is the second they step into the locker room, because they see 3 letters on Raymond, Seider, and Larkin's jerseys, right? And there's no debate. There's no question about who's in this for the long haul, who the leader of these teams, and again, who the core of this team is. And it's not always that easy. There's plenty of not even players that have worn the A, but captains, right? Players that have worn the C that aren't necessarily like a part of that, like you're not building around necessarily, but I do think that there really is something to be said for that. And yeah, Razor is absolutely a fantastic candidate for this as well. I really do think that stretch in March that he had really, ignited this conversation a lot more than it would have in the first half of the season, right? I think his second half, and specifically again when he went on an absolute tear in Larkin's absence, I think really kind of is a really big bullet point when having this conversation.
Well, just the ability to step up in crunch time when nobody else seemed to be able to produce.
A lot of clutch goals.
He could not be stopped. And I think you say, like, in a perfect world, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before they both do. Like, we're just talking about hypothetical where there's one A to be passed out. Who is it going to go to? But long term, they're both going to wear letters for this team. I'm 99.999% sure, which is why they're the biggest slam dunks to talk about. Right? That's why this is just another excuse to talk about how much we love Seider and Raymond in the end, and just about who is ahead of one another in terms of leadership quality when they're both really, really good. So I love both of these options. I don't think either of these options could possibly be wrong. I think people might have feelings one way or the other. I lean Seider. If other people lean Raymond, like that, I'm not going to argue that. That's perfectly acceptable too. But I think there's a few other candidates on this team who I would consider sleeper hits. And I think one of those is actually Michael Rasmussen. And this isn't me as just your Rasmussen slappy.
It kind of is.
No. I have my reasonings. One, we've seen Michael Rasmussen, and we've seen Seider wear the A in preseason, but we've seen Rasmussen wear the A in preseason, and we've seen Rasmussen wear the A in the regular season as well. Now, again, just like with the Kane situation, it was a little bit of a gimmick, right? It was a hometown. He was going back to his hometown to play a game in front of his family. He was given the A to wear for that hockey game. But that's also, it's partly gimmick, but I think there is that you're not just going to hand the A out to anyone who's playing in front of their family, right? Like, we're not handing Joe Veleno the A if he's playing in front of his family. We're not handing Oli Mata the A if he's playing in front of his family, right?
Oli Mata's got a C on his jersey right now. You better watch yourself, all right?
But you get my point. That was funny because you're right. He's
okay.
captain of the team.
I just wanted it to be funny, so I'm glad.
But plus, when is he ever going to play in front of his hometown unless we do another global series because he's from Finland?
There you go. Global series, maybe.
There you go. But my point here being is, like, it's there. It may be a gimmick, but it's also, to me, is evidence that they are deserving. And I think Michael Rasmussen is a deserving candidate. But the reason why, for me, he's a sleeper candidate is because you compare him and his resume to someone like Seider and Raymond, and what does he have that they lack? And it's mostly just experience. Rasmussen's been here for longer. He's a more tenured Detroit Red Wing. And I think he has some great leadership qualities from everything that now I'm not in the locker room, but everything that I hear him speak and I hear his teammates speak of him, especially 2 seasons ago when he was on that tear and everybody wanted to play on a line with him. It seems like, and God, dude, anytime he scores a goal, he's just angry. Talk about fierce competitor. That guy is never happy. And that's a great thing from a hockey player. It's like Andrew Kopp, how he always looks pissed off. It's great. I think Michael Rasmussen is a sleeper candidate. And if they want somebody to bridge the gap, if they felt like Seider and Raymond, for whatever reason, weren't ready, I think Rasmussen's a great candidate to bridge that gap too.
No, I think you're right. And I'll go as far to say this, I don't know if it will be for the Detroit Red Wings, but I am very confident that Michael Rasmussen will wear a letter for somebody in the NHL before he hangs them up.
Wow.
I am rather confident in that. And again, I hope that Michael Rasmussen is a fixture in our, third line, bottom 6 for the foreseeable future. He obviously has carved out a nice role for himself on this team, but thinking the next 15 years, 10 years, whatever he has left in this league, I really do think we've heard so much about how everybody wants to play with him and everybody wanted him on their line last season and whatnot, and he brings so many intangibles like that. I'm not saying it's going to be this fall. Certainly, I don't think he's one of the clubhouse favorites to get it. If Perron leaves or etc. But I would be pretty surprised if by the time he retires, he hasn't worn it for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about a couple other sleeper candidates. So stay tuned for that on segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, in terms of other sleeper candidates, who do you have? Guys you think that are on this roster that could possibly wear the A if David Perron were to not be re-signed?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, but I do think that there is a world in which they just give it to Kopp permanently. I don't think that that's out of the question. I mean, we've heard a lot about his, leadership on this team and whatnot. And even if he is going to be, that third line, bottom 6 type of player going forward, which I think we kind of assume he will be for as long as he's on the Wings at this point. I still do think that he is in that position and in kind of a leadership role. I think that that's a relatively easy one to kind of point to as well.
Yeah, right now they alternate home and away A's for I believe it's the forwards. I don't think they ever take the A off Sherrod. I could be mistaken about that. So there is the world where they're just like, here, Kopp, you're the permanent A on the forward core now, because the Red Wings have always really only carried 2, sometimes 3 A's. They're not like some of these other teams that have like 5 A's. In fact, right now I'm looking up a sleeper hit, and I'm looking at a team right now. I was just confirming that one of these players on the Red Wings roster wore an A in the past. And I'm looking at a roster where there were 5 players wearing A's on top of the captain. So 6 players with letters, which is crazy to me. But that is definitely a possibility. He's definitely looked up to in the locker room to some degree, it seems, at least, given the fact that he's wearing a letter. I don't know about that. My only reservation is just because I don't want to say point total is a reason why you won't get a letter, but his point total has dipped this year. And I know, and I understand part of that is because of the role he was asked to play as like a checking third line center. But it's really hard for me personally to justify giving a leadership leadership role permanently to a guy who is seeing less and less ice time as each season progresses. But I understand that is a thing that does happen, which is why I would maybe even lean more towards like JT Compher maybe as a sleeper hit to wear an A. That one I'm like, it's like a deep cut because he is taking over a role as the 2C. That could change given whatever happens in the offseason, but this last year he played 2C. That one is like literally just a gut check. I really don't have a lot of reasons other than
yeah.
he
No,
could.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that's a bad call. Yeah, I mean, it's, if Michael Rasmussen's a dark horse to wear it, then Andrew Kopp, I don't think it's fair to then be like, well, you don't score enough though, but Michael Rasmussen does.
That is fair. That's fair. That's completely fair.
Obviously different contract situations, different expectations when they sign pen to paper, but like that, in a vacuum, like that's
Cup's already also wearing an A. We're just talking
right,
about
exactly,
which is
right. Yeah, I think there's a world where Comfort does it. But that, at this point we're just like, hey, is there anybody with a 1% chance?
Well, there is one more guy.
Sure.
The guy that I was just checking to make sure that my memory served me right.
Please.
You ready for this one?
Are you going to say Jeff Petrie?
I'm going to say Jeff Petrie.
Nice.
He wore the letter A with the Montreal Canadiens with Ben Sherratt too, I believe. I think those coincided around the same time.
Well,
and
a third of their roster was an alternate. So
because they played together in Montreal. Yeah, six players were A's at that time. And it's actually a little bit of a contradiction to what I said just a couple minutes ago, right? Because we talk about diminishing returns, like players who are playing deeper in the lineup. But he played second pair this year. He's been a leader on different teams. To some degree, I'm making an assumption, but he's a veteran player, so I'm assuming younger players look up to him as well. He played big minutes. A lot was still asked of him despite his age. He's from Michigan too. Like it all lines up in that regard.
Really?
Did you know his dad plays for the Tigers? But like at this point, like you said, Scotty, we're just kind of naming anyone who could. And I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to name like Joe Valeno. I'm not going to name Christian Fisher, who's a UFA, or Jonathan Bergeron, right?
Fisher, deep cut.
Deep cut. I would love it though. I would love it.
I would love it. Are you kidding? I would go to war for that decision if it ever happened. It won't, obviously. But.
Like these last few guys are definitely guys like 1, 5, 10% chance. It just feels like such a slam dunk for someone like Seider and Raymond, who are part
Seider,
of this team's future.
And again, this is all if Perron leaves, but like I don't want to say I would be surprised if it wasn't Seider, but I think he is pretty easily the clubhouse favorite if they are to give it to somebody who didn't wear it this past year.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, man, I think that's as far as the conversation goes. World updates. Team USA pumped Kazakhstan the other day. Nedeljkovic got the start. Augustine didn't play. And Jeff Petrie got an assist. It was a 10-1 game, and he got 1 assist. Which is fantastic.
Alternate captain material right there.
I think it was 10-1, right? Yeah, 10-1. And then Sweden pumped Latvia 7-2. Raymond got an assist. And Finland lost. So Captain Olimata got another L. I love Olimata, so I shouldn't say it like that. But
wearing a C for his home country, man. That's pretty cool.
That was more at you because you were giving me crap earlier rather than at Olimata. And soon we're getting out of pool play and into elimination. And so it'll actually
fun stuff.
Be more interesting. And then we got Griffin's game tonight. So we'll have a game to recap.
Absolutely. What is that, 8 p.m.?
Yeah, it's still in Milwaukee, so it's an 8 p.m. start.
Heck yeah.
Darn Central Time Zone.
Losers.
Fair. All right, Scotty. Any final thought, brother?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
Let us know in the comments who you think is going to be.
Sorry. I also wanted to bring up, I know we talked about it a little bit before we got on air. Was just that who knows what's going to happen this offseason too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, They're not that there's a specific name out there. I'm like, that guy's going to be a Detroit Red Wings ultimate captain. But like, there's a whole of free agency left. Who's to say they don't pick up 35, 36-year-old veteran that's worn a letter before and comes in and assumes a leadership role. That's obviously on the table too. So we wanted to throw that out there, that there's still a whole lot of additions. We did 12 dudes last offseason. Like there's still a whole lot of possibilities for the summer as well. But it's just really easy and I think appropriate to have the conversation now, just because, again, if it's not Seider or Raymond, it would, I think, surprise people.
There's only one guy that comes off the top of my head, 34, 35, UFA, that could be a veteran leader that comes to this roster. Jeez, only one name comes to mind there, Scotty.
Only one name pops into my head. That's crazy.
It's crazy. He's not leaving Tampa. All right, let us know in the comments.
Oh, I thought you were joking about Kaner. But you're right. You're right. Obviously, Stamkos too.
Yeah. We talked about Kaner earlier. So
yeah.
Let us know in the comments who you think is most likely to wear the A if David Perron were to leave. And we'll be back with a new episode to recap the game against the Griffins. Same time, same place, your team every day.
Every day.